The night was cold and eerily silent as Ethan Cole stood alone on the rooftop of his Brooklyn apartment, staring at the glowing cityscape of New York. The air smelled faintly of rain, and lightning cracked somewhere far away over the Hudson. In his hands, he held a faded leather journal, worn, brittle, and older than a century. Across the cover, a single name was embossed in golden letters: Nikola Tesla. Ethan was no ordinary man. At 29, he was already one of the youngest theoretical physicists at MIT, obsessed with space-time anomalies and fringe quantum theories. But this journal, delivered anonymously to his office 2 weeks ago, contained something that defied everything he knew about physics, history, and reality itself. Inside were Tesla's hand-drawn schematics, strange equations, and cryptic notes about something Tesla called the paradox engine. The deeper Ethan studied it, the more disturbing it became. According to Tesla's writings, the engine wasn't designed to generate energy, it was meant to manipulate time. That night, as he traced his fingers over the worn diagrams, a sudden spark jolted his senses. Somewhere deep within the city, something pulsed, like a frequency resonating inside his skull. He didn't know how, but he felt it calling him, drawing him toward a forgotten secret buried for over 100 years. The next morning, Ethan took the journal to someone who might understand its significance: Dr. Eliza Kane, a renowned Tesla historian and cryptographer. Her office at the New York Historical Society was cluttered with manuscripts, sketches, and vintage photographs of Tesla standing beside strange machines that never made it into the public record. "This can't be real," Eliza whispered, flipping through the journal, her brows furrowing as she read Tesla's equations. "Half of these formulas don't exist in modern mathematics. And this," she paused, pointing to a page filled with concentric spirals, a handwritten note scribbled in the margins. Ethan leaned closer. "What does it say?" She hesitated before reading aloud. "On July 10, 1899, the veil will fracture. When frequency aligns with thought, reality collapses. The engine is the key, but beware, for every action echoes twice." Ethan frowned. July 10, 1899, that was Tesla's 43rd birthday. Eliza nodded slowly. "That's also the night Tesla claimed to have received a signal from beyond Earth while experimenting with wireless transmission in Colorado Springs." She glanced up, lowering her voice. "He never published those findings. They were confiscated by the government." Ethan's pulse quickened. "You're saying, this isn't just about energy? Tesla found something they didn't want us to know." Eliza nodded, but her expression darkened. "And if this journal is real, Ethan, someone's been keeping this hidden for over a century. Whoever sent it to you knew you'd figure it out." Before Ethan could respond, a soft hum filled the room. The lights flickered violently, and Eliza's computer screen burst into static. A low-frequency vibration pulsed through the walls, like a deep subsonic tremor. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Eliza swallowed hard. "Did you feel that?" Ethan nodded slowly. "It's the same frequency I've been hearing in my head since I got the journal." Suddenly, Eliza's office phone rang, shrill and jarring in the silence. She hesitated before picking it up. "Hello," she said cautiously. A distorted voice crackled through the line, mechanical yet urgent. "If you value your life, stop decoding Tesla's work. The paradox engine must remain buried." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Ethan and Eliza exchanged tense glances. Whoever this was, they were being watched. That night, Ethan returned to his apartment, but sleep wouldn't come. He kept hearing Tesla's words over and over in his head: "The veil will fracture," as though the universe itself was whispering a warning. Around 2 a.m., his phone buzzed. A new email. No subject line, no sender. Just one attachment, a grainy black and white photograph from 1899. In it, Tesla stood beside a strange machine, tall, cylindrical, lined with coils and crystal rods. But it wasn't Tesla's presence that froze Ethan's breath. Standing in the background, barely visible through the grain, was a man who looked exactly like Ethan. Heart pounding, Ethan stared at the image, unable to process what he was seeing. How could he be in a photograph taken 126 years ago? Just then, his lights flickered again, and the hum returned, louder, sharper, almost deafening now. He grabbed the Tesla journal, flipping desperately through its pages until he found a strange map etched inside, a grid of New York, marked with a single red dot beneath the words, Wardenclyffe Facility. Tesla's abandoned laboratory. By dawn, Ethan and Eliza were on their way to Long Island, where the ruins of Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower still stood, fenced off and forgotten. As they approached the site, the ground beneath them seemed to vibrate faintly, like a living heartbeat buried beneath the earth. Inside the crumbling facility, layers of dust coated Tesla's old workbenches, and rusted machines lay silent beneath faded blueprints. But in the center of the chamber stood something that didn't belong, a massive steel door reinforced with titanium, humming faintly with electromagnetic energy. Tesla's journal had one final note scrawled across its last page. The engine sleeps beneath Wardenclyffe. Do not awaken it unless the veil begins to tear. Ethan reached for the door, but Eliza grabbed his wrist. Wait, she whispered, her voice trembling. What if this is what they're warning us about? What if the engine's activation causes the paradox? Ethan looked at her, then at the journal, and slowly shook his head. Eliza, what if it already has? And then, the humming stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Somewhere deep within the earth, something had just awakened. The silence inside the Wardenclyffe ruins was suffocating, thick with the weight of a century's forgotten secrets. Dust particles hung in the cold shaft of morning light streaming through shattered windows, dancing like tiny sparks suspended in time. Ethan's palm rested on the massive steel door, its surface warm and faintly vibrating, as though something behind it was alive. Eliza, Ethan whispered, his voice unsteady, this isn't just an old lab. Tesla built something here, and it's still running. Eliza shivered, pulling her coat tighter. That's impossible. The tower was dismantled in 1917. The facility's been dead for over 100 years. Ethan shook his head slowly, running his fingers over the faded journal sketches. No, listen to this. He read Tesla's words aloud. The engine cannot be destroyed. It is bound to frequency, not matter. Even in absence, it persists. Before Eliza could respond, a deep metallic click echoed from somewhere below, followed by the faint grinding of machinery. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the floor trembled under their feet. Eliza, something just turned on, Ethan muttered, his heart pounding against his ribs. She grabbed his arm. We should leave. Right now. But Ethan couldn't move. The journal had led him here, step by step, as if pulling him through invisible threads. Somewhere inside, he felt an undeniable truth. Whatever Tesla discovered, it was connected to him. He couldn't walk away now. They descended a narrow spiral staircase into the lower levels of the facility, where thick steel pipes ran along the walls and the air tasted metallic, stale with centuries of neglect. The hum grew louder with every step, low and resonant, almost melodic, like the vibration of some cosmic tuning fork. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a vast underground chamber. In the center stood a colossal machine, Tesla's paradox engine. It was breathtaking, a towering structure of polished brass and dark steel, wrapped in concentric rings of crystal conduits, with a central core pulsating faint blue light like a heartbeat. Strange symbols were etched into its surface, and thousands of fine copper wires spiraled out like veins, feeding into walls lined with massive capacitors. Eliza's voice broke the silence, barely a whisper. Ethan, this looks alien. He nodded slowly. I think that's the point. Tesla's notes had hinted at it. During his experiments in Colorado Springs, he detected strange signals, far beyond any natural frequency on Earth. Signals that didn't just come from space, but from somewhere outside time itself. The journal described a moment when Tesla believed he had made contact, not with beings, but with a pattern. A structure beneath reality. As Ethan approached the engine, his earpiece, which he'd left on from earlier, erupted with static. Then, faintly, a voice came through. Ethan Cole, step away, you're activating the sequence. He froze, glancing at Eliza. Did you hear that? She nodded, pale. Who was that? Before Ethan could respond, the engine pulsed violently. A ring of electric arcs danced across its surface, lighting the chamber in blinding flashes. The hum grew deeper, resonating through their bones, and suddenly the air warped, like heat waves rising from asphalt, bending reality itself. Ethan stumbled back, clutching his head as fragmented visions flooded his mind. Cities collapsing, oceans boiling, skies torn open by streaks of white fire, and then, an image of himself, older, standing on a desert wasteland beneath a fractured sun. And then it was gone. Eliza grabbed his shoulders. Ethan, what just happened? He shook his head, breathing hard. I saw something. The future, maybe. Or another version of it. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them. Armed men in black tactical gear poured into the chamber, weapons raised, their visors glowing faintly under the engine's light. A tall figure stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a weathered face marked by scars and cold gray eyes. "Dr. Cole," he said calmly, his voice steady but commanding. "You need to come with us." Ethan raised his hands instinctively. "Who are you?" The man ignored the question. "Step away from the engine. Now." Eliza moved protectively in front of Ethan. "Who do you work for?" The man's expression remained unreadable. "We're with a division of the Department of Advanced Anomalies. You've triggered something that shouldn't have been touched." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Tesla built this over a century ago. You knew about it this whole time." "Tesla didn't build it alone," the agent said quietly. "He found it." Ethan froze, his mind reeling. "Found it? Found it where?" The agent hesitated, then replied in a low voice. "Not where. When?" Before Ethan could process his words, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and the engine's hum turned into a deafening roar. Panels across its surface opened, releasing streams of golden plasma into the air. The very ground beneath them began to vibrate violently. The agent shouted over the noise, "The containment field's failing. We need to shut it down or it'll rupture the veil." Ethan's voice trembled. "What happens if it ruptures?" The agent looked at him grimly. "Time collapses." Eliza grabbed Ethan's hand. "We have to stop this." Ethan ran toward the engine's control panel, flipping through Tesla's journal for answers. The diagrams were incomprehensible, layers of overlapping equations describing something beyond human understanding, a machine that didn't just exist in space but across multiple temporal states simultaneously. Sweat dripped down his temple as his fingers flew over the ancient brass switches and dials, trying to match the schematic's instructions. "I think I can stabilize it," he muttered. But just as he reached for the final switch, the engine screamed, a shrill, impossible sound that vibrated through the marrow of their bones. A blinding sphere of white light erupted from its core, expanding rapidly. Ethan felt himself ripped away from the floor, weightless, as the world dissolved around him. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. He couldn't hear, couldn't think. And then, he landed hard on cold concrete, gasping for air. The chamber was gone. The engine was gone. The armed agents were gone. He stumbled to his feet, disoriented, scanning his surroundings. He was standing in the middle of Times Square. But this wasn't the Times Square he knew. The skyscrapers were warped and twisted, their glass facades shattered and blackened. The air shimmered with heat and distant smoke. Giant holographic billboards hung cracked and broken, displaying error codes in dozens of languages. A newspaper blew past his feet. He picked it up with trembling hands. The headline read, "Global Collapse, the Tesla Paradox Unleashed, July 10, 2043. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. No, this isn't real. And then he heard a familiar voice behind him, calm and chilling. "You shouldn't have activated the engine, Ethan." He turned slowly, and froze. Standing there in the flickering half-light was himself, older, scarred, eyes hollow with secrets Ethan wasn't ready to know. The other Ethan smiled faintly. "Welcome to the paradox." Ethan froze, staring at the older version of himself standing in the ruins of Times Square. The heat shimmered in the air between them, distorted like broken glass. The older Ethan looked exhausted, his clothes scorched and torn, a faint streak of dried blood across his jaw. But his eyes, they were the same. Piercing, unrelenting, except they carried the weight of decades Ethan hadn't yet lived. "What is this?" Ethan stammered, his voice trembling. "What happened to the world?" The older Ethan took a deep breath, scanning the sky where torn clouds spiraled unnaturally, lightning flashing in total silence. "This," he said finally, "is what happens when the veil collapses. You weren't supposed to activate the engine, Ethan." "I didn't mean to," Ethan protested, shaking his head. "I was trying to stabilize it. I followed Tesla's notes exactly." The older Ethan's gaze hardened. Tesla didn't design the engine to be controlled. He discovered it by accident, and he spent the rest of his life trying to hide it. And now, because of you, the fracture has begun. Ethan's chest tightened, a cold realization settling in his gut. "I caused this." The older Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he walked closer, his boots crunching over shattered glass. "Listen carefully. Right now, You're caught between two timelines, the one you came from, and this, aftermath. Time isn't linear anymore. The engine tore it open like wet paper. That's why you saw yourself in Tesla's photograph. You've already been here. You've always been here. Ethan staggered back, his mind reeling. That doesn't make sense. How could I be in a photo from 1899? Because Tesla sent you there, the older Ethan said flatly. Or, you will send yourself there. That's the paradox. Ethan's hands trembled as he clutched the faded journal, flipping desperately through its pages. No, there has to be a way to reverse this. There is, the older Ethan said softly, his tone almost sympathetic now. But it's dangerous. And if you fail, you'll destroy everything, not just this timeline, but every possible version of it. Ethan's breathing quickened. Tell me what to do. Before the older Ethan could respond, a sharp mechanical whine cut through the heavy air. Out of the haze, several sleek black drones descended, their rotors silent, glowing blue scanners sweeping across the rubble. Moments later, armored figures emerged, the same government task force from the Wardenclyffe facility, but their insignia was different now. Darker, sharper, marked only by a symbol Ethan didn't recognize, an infinity loop fractured down the center. The lead soldier raised a weapon, a rifle humming faint electromagnetic energy. Target acquired, he said into his comms. Neutralize both. Older Ethan cursed under his breath. Run. Ethan hesitated, frozen between confusion and fear. Who are they? They're not here to save you, older Ethan snapped, grabbing his arm. Move. They sprinted down a crumbling side street, weaving through overturned cars and collapsed billboards. The ground shook violently beneath them, cracks splitting open as pockets of raw energy burst from the earth like geysers of light. Ethan gasped between breaths. What's happening to the city? The engine destabilized reality, older Ethan yelled over the chaos. Every choice, every possibility, every outcome, they're bleeding into each other. This isn't just one future, Ethan. It's all of them, colliding. They ducked into a ruined subway entrance, descending into the dark tunnels below. The air was thick and damp, lit only by the faint flicker of dying fluorescent lights. Older Ethan pressed his back to the wall, catching his breath as the hum of drones faded above. Ethan leaned against a cracked pillar, his hands shaking. So, what now? How do we fix this? Older Ethan crouched, tearing a strip of fabric from his sleeve to bind a cut on his arm. There's only one way. You have to go back, to 1899. To Tesla. Ethan blinked, trying to comprehend his words. Back. As in, time travel. You've already done it once, older Ethan said calmly. The photo proves it. But you didn't stay there long enough the first time. Tesla built a failsafe into the engine, a harmonic sequence embedded in its core. You need to help him trigger it. If you don't, the veil collapses completely. Ethan hesitated. But, why me? Older Ethan looked up, his expression unreadable. Because you're the constant. Across every fractured timeline, you're the one variable that doesn't change. That's why the journal found you. That's why the engine responds to you. It's tethered to you. Before Ethan could respond, a sudden metallic roar echoed through the tunnel. One of the drones had tracked them, dropping through a hole in the ceiling. It unfolded into a spider-like machine bristling with plasma cannons, its sensors locking onto Ethan instantly. Older Ethan shoved him aside just as the drone fired, a beam of searing light scorching the concrete wall where Ethan had been standing. The shockwave knocked him off his feet. Go! Older Ethan shouted, drawing a compact pulse pistol from his belt. I'll hold them off. Ethan hesitated, torn between instinct and survival. I can't just leave you. You don't understand. Older Ethan roared, firing at the drone, sparks erupting as its armor deflected most of the blasts. If you die here, none of this gets fixed. Go find Tesla's failsafe, before it's too late. Ethan turned and ran, heart hammering, as the battle behind him echoed through the tunnels. He clutched Tesla's journal tightly, knowing it was the only map he had, the only guide through this impossible nightmare. When he finally emerged from the subway, the world above had changed again. The sky had fractured into kaleidoscopic swirls of colors he couldn't name. Buildings shifted shape as if reality itself was struggling to decide what belonged. Shadows moved independently of their owners, and strange echoes rippled through the air, fragments of conversations from timelines overlapping like broken radio signals. At the center of Times Square, where the engine's influence was strongest, a massive sphere of light hung suspended above the ruins, pulsating slowly like a living thing. Ethan felt drawn to it. Something deep within whispered that this was the origin, the convergence point of every paradox, every timeline, every possibility. And then he heard a voice, not through his ears, but directly in his mind. Ethan Cole. He spun around, but no one was there. The veil is thinning. The engine must be restored to its original frequency, or all paths collapse. Ethan's breath quickened. Who are you? He whispered. The voice was calm, harmonic, almost alien. We are the architects. We existed before your time, before your universe. Tesla was not the first to discover the fracture, only the first to touch it. Ethan's knees nearly buckled as the truth washed over him. Tesla hadn't invented the engine. He had found it, just as the agent had said. And whatever the engine connected to, it wasn't human. The voice faded, leaving behind a deafening silence. Ethan looked up at the sphere of light and tightened his grip on the journal. Somehow, someway, he had to find Tesla's harmonic sequence and reset the engine's core. But deep down, he knew the truth. If he failed, there would be no coming back. And somewhere beneath the rubble, older Ethan was still fighting. Ethan whispered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. I have to finish this, before the paradox consumes us all. Behind him, the sky cracked like shattered glass. Ethan stumbled through the chaos of the fractured city, clutching Tesla's journal so tightly his knuckles turned white. Every breath burned in his lungs as the skyline bent and twisted around him, skyscrapers folding into impossible angles like reflections in shattered glass. Somewhere in the distance, reality was tearing apart. He could hear it, a low, resonant hum like the groaning of a dying universe. The sphere of light at the center of Times Square pulsed brighter, emitting ripples of distortion that warped everything in their path. Ethan shielded his eyes as objects around him fragmented, splitting into multiple versions of themselves, broken cars duplicating and dissolving, streetlights flickering in and out of existence, entire streets blinking like faulty projections. Tesla's notes raced through his mind. The engine bridges dimensions, but the veil between them is delicate, breach it, and time unravels. A voice cut through the madness, sharp and commanding. Ethan, over here. He spun around and saw May, battered and bloodied but alive, emerging from a swirl of collapsing debris. She sprinted toward him, dodging bursts of unstable energy erupting from cracks in the ground. Dorje was behind her, dragging a scorched data core from one of the destroyed drones. We need to stabilize the harmonic field, May shouted, barely audible over the deafening hum. The convergence point is forming. If we don't reset the engine now, it's over. Ethan nodded, flipping open Tesla's journal and scanning the equations scrawled across its final pages. Tesla had hidden the failsafe deep within layers of symbolic codes, ancient Tibetan diagrams, alternating sine waves, and cryptic annotations in multiple languages. But Ethan saw it now, clearly, as though the journal itself was speaking to him. It's not just a machine, Ethan whispered. It's a gateway. May frowned, grabbing his arm. Ethan, focus. How do we shut it down? He pointed to the glowing sphere at the heart of the chaos. We have to sync the engine's frequency with the veil's natural resonance. Tesla called it the harmonic constant. If we match it, the timelines collapse back into one reality. Dorje's face hardened. And if we fail? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Before they could move, a beam of searing blue energy struck the ground nearby, exploding concrete into molten shards. Ethan turned sharply and saw the black armored soldiers emerging again, but these weren't from his timeline. Their armor bore the fractured infinity insignia, their weapons glowing with technology far beyond anything human. May pulled Ethan behind an overturned taxi as another energy blast vaporized the air where they'd just been standing. Who the hell are they? She yelled. They're from a divergent timeline, Ethan said grimly. A future where humanity tried to control the engine, and failed. One of the soldiers activated a wrist module, projecting a three-dimensional hologram into the air. A man's face appeared, pale, cold, expressionless. Ethan Cole, the hologram said, its voice laced with mechanical distortion. By order of the Continuum Authority, you are to surrender the engine's harmonic sequence immediately. Ethan shouted back, if we give it to you, everything ends. The hologram's eyes flickered like static. No. If you resist, everything ends. Before Ethan could respond, a shockwave erupted from the sphere, hurling everyone backward. He slammed into the pavement, dazed, ears ringing, vision blurred. The hum grew louder now, a vibration that seemed to crawl into his bones. The veil was collapsing faster than he'd realized. Somewhere nearby, May screamed his name, but the sound warped, stretching unnaturally like echoes in a cavern. Time itself was beginning to fracture. Through the haze, Ethan saw movement, an all-too-familiar figure emerging from a rift in the air. His heart skipped. It was older Ethan. But this time, his face was pale, his arm badly burned, and his eyes, they burned with desperation. "You don't have much time," older Ethan rasped, limping toward him. "The architects are already here." Ethan's head spun. What? The voices you heard," older Ethan said. "They're real. They built the engine, long before Tesla found it. This was never human technology. It was a lock, and you just opened it." Ethan's stomach twisted. "You mean the engine isn't ours?" Older Ethan shook his head. "It's a key, Ethan. The gateway is opening because it's summoning them back." Suddenly, the air shimmered, and shapes began to emerge from the sphere, tall, luminous beings made entirely of fractal patterns and cascading light. Their forms shifted constantly, as though they existed in more dimensions than Ethan's mind could process. The hum intensified into a low, harmonic chant that bypassed his ears entirely and resonated directly inside his skull. May whispered, trembling, "Are those the architects?" Ethan nodded slowly, unable to speak. One of the luminous beings drifted forward, its voice layered and resonant, vibrating through every cell in his body. The paradox was inevitable. The engine was never meant to remain silent. Ethan stepped forward cautiously, clutching the journal. "If we don't reset it, this entire world will collapse. Billions of lives will be lost." "Life is not lost," the being replied calmly. "It is rewritten." "Rewritten?" May echoed, horrified. Older Ethan shouted over the roar of collapsing structures around them. "Don't listen to them. If we let them rewrite this, humanity doesn't survive. We become something else." Ethan's mind raced. Tesla's harmonic sequence, the failsafe, it wasn't designed to stop the engine. It was designed to lock it. Tesla had known all along. That's why he'd buried the codes in layers of riddles, why he'd hidden the journal in the first place. Suddenly, fragments of Tesla's voice echoed in Ethan's mind, as though the journal itself was alive. The veil must remain closed. The frequencies must not align. Ethan opened the journal to the final page, tracing the sequence with his fingertips. He looked up at May and Dorje, then at his older self. "I'm going to reset the engine." Older Ethan grabbed his wrist. "If you do, you'll erase everything, even this version of me. Even her." He glanced at May. "Are you willing to pay that price?" Ethan hesitated, heart pounding. May stepped forward, placing her hand over his. "Do it," she whispered. "If we don't, there won't be a world left to save." With trembling hands, Ethan approached the central console beneath the sphere. Tesla's harmonic sequence glowed faintly on the journal page, as if reacting to the engine's presence. He began inputting the coordinates, aligning the frequencies one by one. Each setting sent tremors through the ground, the air vibrating with unnatural resonance. The architects stirred, their voices overlapping now, echoing like infinite reflections. "The lock must remain open. Do not interfere." Ethan ignored them, fingers flying over the console. One by one, the harmonic tones began to synchronize. A deep, rising hum filled the air, louder and louder until it became almost unbearable. Then, at the final sequence, the sphere exploded in blinding light. For an instant, there was silence. And then, everything collapsed. Ethan fell into darkness, weightless, suspended in nothing. Time didn't exist here. He couldn't feel his body, couldn't breathe, couldn't even think. Then, slowly, light returned. He gasped and sat up, coughing violently. Around him, the world was normal. Times Square was intact. The sky was blue. People bustled around him, cars honked, advertisements played on massive screens. No fractures. No architects. No sphere. May stood beside him, wide-eyed, tears streaming down her face. Dorje sat on the curb, breathing heavily but alive. "It worked," Ethan whispered, his voice hoarse. "We reset it." He opened Tesla's journal, and froze. The pages were blank. Every formula, every note, every sketch, gone, as though it had never existed. May placed a hand on his shoulder. It's over, she said softly. But Ethan wasn't sure. Because in the distance, beyond the noise of the city, he swore he heard a low, harmonic hum. Somewhere, the engine was still awake. And the paradox wasn't finished.